Tonight, thanks to this new reporting in the Times, one of the things we're learning is that the Attorney General's interference in cases involving people close to the president goes all the way back to his very first days as Attorney General. It goes all the way back to the case of Michael Cohen. This is from today's scoop in the Times. Quote, shortly after he became Attorney General last year, William Barr set out to challenge a signature criminal case that touched President Trump's inner circle directly and even the president's own actions, the prosecution of Michael Cohen, Mr. Trump's longtime fixer. The debate between Mr. Barr and the federal prosecutors who brought the case against Mr. Cohen was one of the first signs of a tense relationship that culminated last weekend in the abrupt ouster of Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney in Manhattan. It also foreshadowed Barr's intervention in the prosecutions of other associates of Mr. Trump. By the time Mr. Barr was sworn into office last February, Michael Cohen, who had paid hush money to an adult film star who said she had an affair with Mr. Trump, had already pled guilty and was set to begin a 3-year prison sentence, all of which embarrassed and angered the president. But Mr. Barr spent weeks in the spring of 2019 questioning the prosecutors over their decision to charge Mr. Cohen with violating campaign finance laws. At one point during the discussions, Mr. Barr instructed Justice Department officials in Washington to draft a memo outlining legal arguments that could have raised questions about Cohen's conviction and undercut similar prosecutions in the future. Mr. Barr's unexpected involvement in such a politically sensitive case suggested that he planned to exert influence over prosecutors in SDNY, which is long known for operating independently of Washington. Mr. Barr and other officials have told aides and other U.S. attorneys that the Southern District needs to be reined in. I mean, here's why this is such a big deal. The decision by SDNY to drop the rest of that case over the hush money payments, to only prosecute Michael Cohen and not go after anybody else in that case, that has always stuck out like a sprig of poison ivy right in the middle of the fairway, right? It has always just seemed unusual and unexplained, given the fact that prosecutors in that office explicitly identified other people who took part in the commission of those felonies. Michael Cohen, the guy who went to prison, didn't even benefit from it himself. Why is he the only one who went to prison on it? I mean, they described the involvement of all of these other people in those felonies, including the person who most benefited from the commission of those felonies, and, in the words of prosecutors, the guy who directed the commission of those felonies. Right? The top of that list was Individual 1, the president himself, identified by SDNY prosecutors in the Cohen case. When he pled guilty, Michael Cohen explicitly pointed at the president, saying that he had acted at the president's direction. And yes, the case involved other people too. I mean, yeah, maybe you can't charge the president while he's serving as president under Justice Department policy, arguably. But it wasn't even just the president and Michael Cohen. It wasn't them acting alone in this illegal scheme for which Cohen went to jail. I mean, we've literally seen the checks by which they laundered the money for those felonies through the president's company. Right? In addition to Individual 1, SDNY prosecutors identified executives at Trump's company who facilitated the hush money scheme. How can it be that Michael Cohen is the only one who went to jail, the only one who got charged? The investigation got closed inexplicably, without warning, months after Michael Cohen got sentenced. SDNY closed the hush money investigation in a footnote to a court filing, telling a judge, quote, the government has effectively concluded its investigations of who, besides Michael Cohen, was involved in and may be criminally liable for the 2 campaign finance violations to which Cohen pled guilty, and whether certain individuals made false statements or gave false testimony or otherwise obstructed justice. Quietly, in a footnote, months later. Why'd they drop that? Why'd they drop it after only Cohen went to prison? Well, now we know that that happened after William Barr personally and directly pressured the prosecutors in that office for months, to the point where it seemed like he was maybe even trying to undo the prosecution of Cohen after Cohen had started serving his sentence. He's pressuring them on that case about Cohen himself, even after Cohen's going to jail already. And then they decide, okay, we're not going to bring charges against anybody else in this case either. No explanation why. Well, now we know, thanks to reporting from the New York Times, because people are apparently now talking about what Bill Barr has been doing to the rule of law in this supposedly super independent U.S. Attorney's Office, now we know that one of the people who had been actively under investigation for potentially having lied to investigators or trying to obstruct the investigation was a, quote, senior executive at Mr. Trump's company. Well, William Barr is there leaning on those prosecutors personally and directly about how much he's against that prosecution. So whatever happened to that? Why did it get closed quietly in a footnote months later? I'll tell you one other thing from the Times reporting tonight. Times reporters also say in this new reporting tonight that Attorney General William Barr has been intimately and personally involved in all of the details of the prosecution of our friends Lev and Igor, too. Really? Even them, too. The guys who just got their trial put off from October, right before the election, till next year, after the election's over? He's been personally involved in pressuring them on that, too?